Who was Engels? Friedrich Engels was an early Marxist thinker during the 1800s. Born to a wealthy family, Engels took on the typical rich kid tradition of getting involved with social justice. Being pulled out of school at 17, he was made to work in his family's factory in Bremen. During this time, he started to get the revolutionary idea that maybe workers shouldn't be horribly exploited, and that children don't deserve to have their limbs ripped off while fixing machines. Later, he went back to Berlin to study anthropology and philosophy. While in university, he started anonymously writing for the Leftist Zeitung, which was a radical left newspaper ran in part by Karl Marx. Engels and Marx at first didn't get along, as Marx thought Engels to still be part of the young Hegelians. When Engels' parents found out that their child was starting to become a commie, they sent him to Manchester to run one of the most horribly exploitative factories as a way to teach him good work ethics. Nothing teaches a kid to pull themselves up by the bootstraps quite like placing them in a position of power over others through family ties. Engels, however, used this newfound position of power to explore and write more about the exploitation that was going on all around him. Going into the slums and talking to the workers who lived there, his articles would be sent back to the Leftist Zeitung and eventually collected into his book called The Conditions of the Working Class in England. Engels wasn't just running around and interviewing random rats. He also had the habit of sleeping around with everyone he met, including his eventual long-term girlfriend, Mary Burns. Although Engels saw monogamy as a virtue, he couldn't keep up with the holy lifestyle of one woman for long, eventually traveling to Paris where he said, "If there were no French women, life would not be worth living." While in France, he met up with Marx at a cafe and kicked things off with him. Marx and Engels' relationship would soon become a lot more personal rather than professional. Together they would travel around Europe, meeting with the local communist groups, writing papers, and trying to spark a revolution here and there. After a while of tomfoolery, Engels and Marx went back to London where they would spend most of their last days. Working together on Das Kapital and other works, Marx ended up dying before Volume 2 could ever be produced. Engels, taking up this call, started to work on compiling Volume 2 and 3 of Das Kapital through a mix of Marx's notes and conversations they had back in life. Although still revolutionary in his Engels started to advertise for a more peaceful transition wherever possible. Later writers would take this to mean that he wanted a social democracy, but luckily Engels was still alive to clarify that he really wanted to vote it in where it was possible and revolution when not. Friedrich Engels was an important, although rarely talked about revolutionary figure who worked closely with Karl Marx throughout his life. Together they inspired the leftist theory and infighting that still goes on to this day. Okay, bye.
United forever in friendship and labor, our mighty republics will ever endure.